apparently Ernest Hemingway always would say that you always have to, in his opinion, you always want to leave a little bit left in the tank. You know, you don't want to work yourself to your death. Leave something in the tank for tomorrow. Of course, he's a writer. He's creative, so he knew this from his own experience. And I started to realize, like, there is for sure a way that I could live my life where I'm waking up every day and doing all the things I want to do. I'm doing my training. I'm doing my meditation. I'm doing my eating the way I want to eat. I'm working on my business. I'm spending time with friends. And I am not overdoing it on my work. And so it became not just a matter of overcoming myself on different issues that had come up in my business, but then overcoming myself to a whole new level of like, gosh, there's so much to do, but I can't necessarily do all of it, and starting to invoke the 80-20 principle. There was a friend of mine I ran into the other day who was just telling me that, he had a lot of great things going on overall in his life, but then there was this big challenge surrounding finance. And of course, I'm just thinking to myself, okay, well, I've been also, learning through that. Maybe I could offer some valuable advice. And in this case, and this is sort of a digression, but it'll all come together. I noticed that in our society, and in my generation in particular, there seems to be a large group of people, and just a general mindset that like money and things will just come just by like manifesting, or just by kind of manifesting. People really, especially in the more spiritual communities, people believe in manifesting, and I totally also do. I believe that's the word manifesting. I'm not the biggest fan of, because to me it implies to people that you don't really have to do the work, so to speak, to get an outcome. Like, oh, I can just manifest this thing. What I'm trying to pinpoint here is that yes, you can quote unquote manifest or create your reality, but in my own experience, it wasn't just like sitting like expecting, right? It was actually going in, and every single painful thing that I had accumulated, all these, let's say, false beliefs, but things that I was doing that were just not optimal. So I'll see if I can give some tangible examples. I'd love to, especially for anyone. Well, actually, so I never really stayed up too late at night. So I did a lot of things right from a health perspective. So in my business, this is a great example there are many people who might listen to your podcast who are older, more experienced business people.
Take some of that.
Thank you.
When I hand Matt a bag, it's a one-way ticket to nowhere.
Thanks, Paul. You're the best.
These things need to be circulated,
baby. Yeah,
baby.
Of course. Just like you said about money.
Yeah.
So I would hire, for example, I hired a couple employees early on in my business, and what I was doing by hiring people wasn't building on something that I was really stoked about. It was actually running away from my problems. It was trying to bring people in so that I didn't have to face myself. And so, as I described earlier, I got to this place where that was compounding, this constant fear of showing up and facing my life. It was compounding.
It's a great observation you made there, especially at your age. I mean, that's a very, that's a real wisdom hit there.
I appreciate it. I had money in the bank, and so I was able to spend it for several months. To kind of, I didn't look. I just didn't look because I didn't want to look. I didn't want to see what was going on, right? So I spent money, and month by month, my business bank account was draining.
Right.
Going down.
They do that.
Yeah, right. But after a while, it was going like negative. I was accumulating more and more debt on credit cards because I'll run expenses through credit cards for the points and the purchase protection and stuff. But I would always be able to pay it on the spot. That was the goal, right? That's how it should be. But in this case, I eventually got to a point where I couldn't, and I was like, oh my gosh, and it hurt so much. And at the same time, a relationship, a girl who deeply loved me and I deeply loved, was sort of moved on, as I also told you the story a little bit earlier, but sort of moved on, and that hurt so much because I thought that I was like totally good, like I was kind of had already moved on, had gone traveling and kind of had gone on and lived my life, but I didn't realize how much of a connection I felt there and how valuable that those things are, the things that really matter, not just the superficial stuff, but the real deep love. And so all of a sudden that was like a huge kick in the butt, and at the same time as this challenge is going on in my business. And it was like I felt like the whole world was kind of falling apart before me. And yet I had been studying, and learning from Dispenza enough to know, well, I could give up and throw in the towel and say, you know what, I got to move on to another venture, at least in my business. The relationships, I can't save that, but I had at least my business still, functional. And the question was, I could throw in the towel and say I'm going to give up, or I could say, I'm not even going to count my losses. I'm just going to say it is what it is. I am where I am, and this is, I think, the most valuable exercise in any case, and it's almost a cliche, but I think it's important that it's understood for how powerful it is to say, like, in any one moment, like, we're here, and every money we've lost, like in the business, I think business can be a great analogy for life. Like all the money that's been spent on, we've wasted or lost, not wasted. It's only a waste if we don't learn the lesson, right? But it's like lost, tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars on things that because I wasn't showing up. And so I finally started showing up, and I had to let go of employees, and I had all of a sudden so much more responsibility, but I just literally had to put my head down and get after it and just overcome. And the thing that was so interesting was I realized from the spiritual perspective, like it wasn't about the work that I was doing outside. That was all a sort of externalization. That was a reflection of what was going on inside. As soon as I started doing this work inside, which was sort of triggered out of necessity, let's say God showing me that my business was going in not the right direction, was the sign I needed to say, I got to change things. And I started all of a sudden asking the questions. Well, and Dispenza will say, as many do, that many people it takes crisis, disease, all these things to finally want to change. For me, that was the case. In this case, I was in a what felt really challenging situation. Thankfully, not like life-threatening. I would be fine anyway. But I finally had to decide, like, I'm going to change. And I asked myself, well, what are the things, and in a business context, well, if my this is just how my mind thought about it. Like if my financials are sort of negative, well, why don't I just think of it like I'm starting fresh? Like I might as well, like I'm starting a new thing, and I get to apply all my new ideas and new knowledge to a new thing. And I thought, well, first of all, raw optics is awesome, but I knew it wasn't meant to be about just optics, just eyewear. I knew it was meant to be even greater, much more, helping people in many more ways. And so that's when I realized, well, I want raw. Raw is the true brand, and optics is just sort of a subsidiary. And so I started shifting energy into raw, and all the amazing new products we're working on in lighting are going to be under raw. But it was looking at that. The thing that was so interesting is, of course, that's what it took for me. But if in any way anyone at any point in any situation in life can realize that, like, everything that's happened is past, like whatever you've sunk in energy into, it's like I've heard the term is called the sunk cost fallacy. It's like you're playing poker or blackjack. You've gone really deep in on a hand, but the guy across the table has better cards than you for sure.
Yeah.
Just based on the way it's all come down on the table. You could kind of try to bluff your way out of it and keep going, and you might win occasionally. But that only lasts for so long, bluffing, right? And that's what many people, I think, do in our lives. We kind of bluff, thinking, oh, we're going to make it work. I had to literally show my hand. The best thing I could have done was, well, you don't have to necessarily show your hand. You can fold and just say, I lost that money, but I'm going to go in and do a better job next time and be more intelligent. And in my experience in the business, it was just saying, I'm not going to kill myself over all the mistakes I made. I'm going to learn the lesson, and I'm going to come back in and start fresh and start doing things the way I want to do. And over a year later now, from that challenging experience, let's say, I have basically taken my whole business. I took it into my own hands. I started doing all the things that I was sort of shying away from. And whenever there was a problem, I just started showing up and saying, well, as you said, it's never going to get easier per se, in the sense of the challenges that I face are never going to get easier. I realized one day I was in the shower. I was like, God, Jeff Bezos, he's dealing with so much stuff at Amazon. Like, I can only imagine, beliefs about what Amazon's doing, good or bad for the world aside, like, that guy is doing a lot. And I can only imagine he would look at my business and say, this is peanuts. You do this, 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 and this. Don't waste your time on it because it's so small. They wouldn't even give it the time of day, per se, in relative to a multi-trillion or multi-billion-dollar company like Amazon. And I just thought, what if I could take that, like, let's say, a higher business consciousness now with a positive approach to the world and to the environment and all that stuff, but a higher way of thinking about problems and look at my business. How would I start addressing my own challenges? Surely other people have done this. And it was just that prayer, let's say, that evocation to the universe, putting some intention out, that I opened up that channel, as you explained beautifully through your example of love, to be able to then receive. I had that will that opened the opportunity for that desire to come in, that response. And all of a sudden, I started facing every question in my business. Like, it's not going to be easy, but I can overcome myself and do it. And this was a really striking thing, is like, one day I might have what some would consider the weight of their world on the shoulders, let's just say, in a way that maybe you do now with all the responsibilities and a family. I could have a family and kids and a wife and a much bigger business with many employees. And how it wasn't about all the things I have to do on my to-do list the next day. It's like, as a great friend of mine put it one time, it's like, who is the guy who I have to become who would be able to handle that, and not handle it constantly stressed, but handle it with ease and peace. And I love the Bible verse, even though you've gone to great lengths to share the challenges of the Bible and how many people have been negatively affected through certain
most of it's just due misunderstanding and misinterpretation.
Yeah, but there's a verse, Jesus said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And if I could, and it sounds so simple, but it's these simple things, like just you said, standing like your monk master told you to do. It's a simple thing. If I could just take everything, even this podcast, and just say, my yoke is easy, my burden is light, and approach it in such a way that I'm willing to face challenges and overcome them, everything started to become easier. And then I started to learn what was really interesting, going from what would be maybe more of a, I would say, more feminine energy. As I mentioned, I had this imbalance. And so this is sort of the playing out of this own imbalance in my own life and overcoming it. Let's say more feminine energy. And of course, nothing wrong with feminine energy. It's necessary for all life and all creation, right? But in the context of running a business, I came to understand that I needed definitely a lot more masculine energy to come in and face challenges and not shy away, but just go straight and head on to my fears.
That's the warrior archetype. You needed the warrior in you.
I needed to start awakening the warrior, and the more I did, the easier it became. And it was just it's such a simple concept. It's like I just had to start showing up every day and overcoming. Now I bounced to a bit of maybe a other extreme where I would work maybe too many hours or too hard, and then literally fatigue my brain to the point where I would be so tired my body wouldn't even be able to recover enough, even with 8 or 9 or 10 hours of sleep. I'd still wake up feeling a little tired. And then I started to learn the value of what apparently Ernest Hemingway always would say, that you always have to, in his opinion, you always want to leave a little bit left in the tank. You don't want to work yourself to your death. Leave something in the tank for tomorrow. Of course, he's a writer. He's creative, so he knew this from his own experience. And I started to realize, like, there is for sure a way that I could live my life where I'm waking up every day and doing all the things I want to do. I'm doing my training. I'm doing my meditation. I'm doing my eating the way I want to eat. I'm working on my business. I'm spending time with friends. And I am not overdoing it on my work. And so it became not just a matter of overcoming myself on different issues that had come up in my business, but then overcoming myself to a whole new level of like, gosh, there's so much to do, but I can't necessarily do all of it. And starting to invoke the 80-20 principle, as it's put in one way.